It's a podcast.
Podcast.
We do these sometimes.
So what are we talking about?
We don't do them.
Yeah, we do.
Other times.
We never know what
I'm
we're
Andrew.
talking about. Well, we do.
3/4 of us are really into Helldivers right now as of the last 48 hours, so Curl can go fuck himself in his Paris trip.
Okay.
Wow.
He's over there, not playing Helldivers.
Mm-hmm.
Don't need it. Can't live this way. No, we had a curve here because we originally were exposed to Helldivers 2 on this podcast, I think, when we watched one of like the game awards, which are of course just trailer shows and not really about awards. And I think we experienced my real-time reaction of being like, "Wait, are they doing a Starship Troopers game?" And then just immediately the recoil when I'm like, "Oh, Helldivers 2." Because Helldivers was the least interesting possible thing it could have been to me, because it's just like a top-down dual-stick shooter that has slid off my brain for literal years, and I never understood why anyone even played it. To the point where I brought that up.
Twin-stick shooter?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The first game was a twin-stick shooter. And then when I
Yeah,
brought
but
it up
it's fine.
when I brought it up a few weeks ago, because somebody asked about it, I was like, why would I play a twin-stick shooter? Who gives a shit? No. And no one corrected me. Not even the person asking the question, like, pointed out that Helldivers 2 is not a twin-stick shooter. It's now a third-person shooter that's, like, got a ton of shit going on. But,
I think I brought it up and I thought I had mistaken it, because I was like, oh, I don't remember it being a twin-stick shooter. Maybe I misunderstood what the game was. Maybe I thought it was third person, but it's actually, like, only third person when you like when you arrive or whatever, and then it turns into dual stick shooter. I was like, oh okay.
That'd be very weird.
I don't know, man. I've seen worse. I've played worse.
It's just their original game from 2015 is a top-down shooter, and it's like, that's just the whole genre blurs together as being practically the same video game across the board, but like then they also like just the game itself usually just kind of turns into a blur, and so I just never had a reason to care. But also, this whole time, I don't think I ever knew that Helldivers was made by Arrowhead Studios, the people that made Magicka, which immediately is a bit intriguing, because Magicka is that fucked up magic game where you and all your friends try to mix elements together to cast spells, and just pressing the wrong sequence of buttons can just damage you because the elements conflict with each other, and if you cast certain things in certain ways, like you cause horrifying screen-wide chain reactions that kill your friends and so on. Like, it's about like the experience of most people for Magicka was hopping in for like 10 minutes, accidentally blowing up all your friends, filming a funny YouTube video about it, and then probably not coming back to it. But if you came back and tried to actually beat the entire story with your friends, it was actually like a harrowing experience a lot of the time, because of how carefully you had to try to like figure out how to make this shit work. And it was just kind of wild. Like, it had all these like design to fail mechanics, like how two people can make beams, and if you cast your beams, you can cross the streams to combine them into a bigger beam for a super attack, but it does inherently mean kind of pointing an attack at your teammate and hoping that you both successfully combine the attacks into a cool attack. So it's like a lot of it was just somewhat cleverly designed to just set you up to fail and screw each other over all the time and so on. And so realizing that Helldivers was by those people along, which I only found out after I was already installing Helldivers 2, definitely made it click, where I'm like, oh, hang on a minute, this might be really interesting. And right off the bat, it's this like third-person shooter it just is Starship Troopers. That saves so much explanation. Fascist space marines fighting bugs, and they're disposable. But it has this whole call system where you call in airstrikes and tournaments and things like that. Turrets, airstrikes, supplies, and so on. And like people respawning can land on each other and kill each other. You can call in supplies and squash your teammates. The turrets you summon can just shoot you. Like, they just lock onto the nearest enemy and shoot them, and they will shoot through you to get to them, and that's just how they go, basically. And like, it's chaos. It's a chaotic game, and it's been wild, and it does that while also simultaneously poking into some of the like old Left 4 Dead vibes, where there's just a pressure that mounts and then it kind of never lets up, where just waves and waves of enemies are chasing you down while you're trying to move together as a squad to accomplish your objectives and pick each other up and keep moving while the problems keep escalating and escalating and escalating. So like people combine it simultaneously for very different reasons to like Lethal Company and Left 4 Dead and Risk of Rain, and there's reasons for each of those comparisons because there's a vibe to it. I was sold very quickly when I got into the game, like faster than I expected for what was otherwise just like it's a shooter. It's kind of hard to stand out a little bit. But this has been a wild ride.
I really need to try it because I've been trying to understand what you guys are all on about, and not just you. Like this is the new viral hit, as it were. I look at the gameplay and I understand what's going on more or less, but it was like it just feels like another one. It's just another shooter.
I think it gets a lot of appeal from like how kind of disempowered you are individually, like a bit akin to like Left 4 Dead and so on, where you can't handle how much is coming at you individually, and you can barely handle it as a group, and your most powerful tools are so destructive that they're just as likely to kill you in the process. And so it's just a very tense risk-reward mess. And they've also just like they've played some funny games with some of the shit. Like when you want to call down things from the sky to help you out, you have to basically stop moving, hold control, and do like a little DDR game where you have to press like a 4 to 8 button sequence to call the thing down, which eventually you could memorize, but like it does mean you have to do this finicky thing in the middle of the chaotic thing. So you're kind of like once again set up to fail, where you can get in this loop of flubbing the inputs over and over again while standing still while a wave of things are coming at you. It's just it's a wild experience.
It also is just chaotic, and I think that makes it a little bit more manageable for people new coming in, because even the veterans are dying. Like there's not a it is always chaotic. There's not like, no matter how coordinated you are, I think even it always just becomes slightly more unmanageable than you thought it would be. Especially like once the waves start kicking in, enemies will start flowing in, and you'll see one and go, "Oh fuck, it's that guy," and then it turns into like a effort. You have to work and think about how to get rid of an enemy. Like it's always like one or two enemies away from being a really bad time. Not in like a unfun way, but like in a like, oh, things are getting crazy. We need to like band together. We need to focus. We need to work and deal with a thing, which is kind of like Left 4 Dead when you have like the whatever it's called, chargers and stuff, the tanks. When they show up, you kind of have to like focus. And
like what was always so clever about Left 4 Dead was the fact that you guys could just shoot and pick each other up basically and do various contextual prompts to work at something that always takes too long, like opening doors or whatever. So like all of the elite enemies, like the liquor or whatever, that's not a liquor, it's a smoker and so on, were all like a guy that inherently across the board. Is there a liquor in Left 4 Dead?
Yeah, it's the guy who grabs you with your tongue.
That's the smoker, isn't it? The liquor is from Resident Evil. I don't think they use the same name.
Oh, you're right. Okay.
That's why I corrected myself. But like across the board, they were all designed to incapacitate you, basically. Except for like the witch or something was like this like sneak around this thing, try very hard not to make this thing join the fight situation. And like and that's what you hated about this game when you were 20, but that was the whole point of Left 4 Dead back then, was the fact that you could not get through the game alone. You had to play as a group of friends, and so you had to be keeping an eye on each other and maintaining just a certain closeness, because if somebody got nabbed by one of the various crowd control enemies, somebody else had to be there to immediately save them, or they just would be out of the level and no one would be able to reach them. And that's all while the endless pressure of incoming enemies comes in and so on. And given that there was a new Left 4 Dead basically like last year or whatever, and it was and everybody hated that. This
Back
is
for Blood.
a good replacement for that premise because it does a lot that you would want from that, while not just being like a cynical remake of the original Left 4 Dead's or anything. It's very compelling. It's a good time, and it's got fake classes, essentially, like soft classes where you don't pick classes, but over the course of playing, like, you unlock different armors and so on, and you unlock all these different airdrops you can bring in and different weapon kits, and you're inevitably going to kind of like all specialize in different directions from each other. And because you kind of need to fill a different niche, because you can only equip 4 drops. You can only bring in like your one main weapon really and your one armor set. So like if you want to have the full breadth of things available to you, then you like that you become the guy that has that, and so on. And it's chaos. It's fun. I like co-op games that inherently cause you to cooperate, as opposed to just being a game that could be played single player, but you can also play with 4 single players.
Interesting. I do feel that Helldivers feels more like that compared to Left 4 Dead. I feel like in Left 4 Dead you do have to have people, but Helldivers, I feel like it is a game that I could probably accomplish myself if I wanted to.
On easier difficulties, I guess. It does have the scaling.
Yeah, on easier difficulties. Yeah, Left 4 Dead, I think the way I played it too was mainly because it was so linear that I knew even if I went ahead, I'm going ahead to a location that everyone else is also going to have to go to. Whereas Helldivers is a giant map that has no fucking like, you have to do an objective, but there's a shit ton of stuff to do outside of that, and you have no idea what direction anybody's going to be going in. Someone could be like, I'm going to go check out a car in the middle of the field, and another person's like, I'm going to go to this radio station. Another person's like, I'm doing main objective. Like, it's
splitting up is a comically bad idea in that game, though.
Yes, it is. Which is what I mean. That is so that to me, that is the big difference between Left 4 Dead and Helldivers, is that if you play, it's hard to play Helldivers alone. It sucks. I've done it like 2 or 3 times now, and like the parties are never reasonable. It's always just like, I don't know where we're going. Everyone's killing each other. There's no like, there's no teamwork of any kind. No one knows when an enemy's there. It's just hell. Whereas Left 4 Dead, you can, even if you can't communicate, you can reasonably survive on any difficulty because you're all trapped in the same area together.
I think it's a complexity thing, because Left 4 Dead is so stripped down and has so little going on that it is you have the one job to do, and that's it. So that's why you can get away with not communicating. So it's not necessarily an indicator of how cooperative a game is or isn't. It's just that game is so streamlined to being the one game that it is every time, and that's why the variability is kind of low run to run. Is because that's just what you do. You run down the one hallway. It's a disguised hallway that looks like a variety of different things, but it's basically a hallway, and you endlessly get flooded by zombies, and periodically specials infected come in to essentially test whether or not you're playing together correctly. And then you get to the end. It's intense. There's a lot of cool stuff about how it feels moment to moment, but like it's extremely simple of an overall layout.
Yeah,
you can't really get lost compared to each other. But like, I do think that Helldivers is still inherently like extremely more cooperative than like how shooters normally are. Because normally it's like, you could play as one Master Chief, but what if you were 4 Master Chiefs? And like the 4 Master Chiefs don't have like crossplay or interactions really. You just are all also shooting the same elite with the same guns, and you all spawn with the same guns and the same equipment, and now it's just the gear that you find over the course of the levels being split between people instead of one person making choices about which ones to keep, and that's about it.
And also watching out for those things. You need to know what kind of class someone is, because they can also just kill you with that class.
They can kill you with anything. It's easy.
Sure. That's true. You are right. But it's fun. It's a fun little game. There's a lot to do with it, and it hopefully only keeps getting better. But also it runs like poopy butthole, and
oh really? Oh no.
It does. Yeah. Its performance is dog shit. It truly doesn't function. Where the thing is that the same graphic settings, like across the same cards, don't even run the same for people. Like it doesn't make any sense. Yeah. So
Defunct engine.
this is like an issue that I'm kind of I'm running into really specifically, right? So like I have my 4090 and the game. So Brewing was playing it. I walk into his room and he's on a 4070 and he's running it on ultra and he's getting 60 frames per second locked, DirectX 12, rendering at native 1440p ultra wide. And I'm like, all right, cool, that makes sense. I install it on my computer. It's using my 4090. I'm getting 9 frames per second. I'm like, all right, what the fuck is up with this? Look into it. It has it has upscaling in it and render scaling that is meant to make it easier to run, sort of like a DSS or an FSR, but its implementation is completely like proprietary. It's not any of these other better libraries that are available, and it runs entirely off the CPU. So it runs like dog shit on the mode that's meant to make it run better. So you turn it to native, and then you're rendering a full picture with full ray tracing and global illumination and yada yada, like all of that at native, which obviously doesn't perform well. So you turn all that shit off, and then it's still juddering and messed up and fucked up. So I had to use a launch argument to make it launch in DirectX 11 to get basic functionality back into the game. And now it runs great for me, but Brewing booted it up on his PC today, and it was running at like 9 frames per second for some reason. So I was like, oh, just put it in DirectX 11. And when he does that, it just crashes to desktop now.
Wow.
So I don't know what's up with the performance of this game. It performs like dog shit. They desperately need to patch it. And I honestly don't think it's just an engine thing. Like, I think it's like an actual problem. And this is a kind of just gets to a bigger thing, which is that the game is just extraordinarily buggy. Currently, Keith said all this nice stuff about the builds and the fact that like characters are going to specialize and there are different classes and stuff. But currently, like, armor is completely bugged. So the way that armor works is you have 3 different types of armor. You have light, medium, heavy armor, and they all feel different to wear. And the trade-off is supposed to be they have different stats, right? And the biggest of which is like damage reduction. But damage reduction as a stat doesn't work right now. So all armor has the same defense, which means light armor is just the best because you have the same defense as high armor or heavy armor, but you move 2 times as quickly and your stamina regenerates twice as fast.
Right. I was talking more about that different armor has different effects on them.
Yes.
So they make you specialize in specific mechanics.
Definitely. But I mean, the point is that all of that stuff is supposed to synergize with all of these things, and like, but the main things that you use those synergies with are broken. So like that's a bummer. But as a game, it's so compelling and so good on its own that it's just like deeply enjoyable to play even with that. So you suffer through it. I do wish performance was better. There's zero reason why this game should not be running at a locked 144 frames per second for every single person that plays it. It's not that pretty.
Yeah.
But it struggles to run. Apparently AMD cards have it really bad. Like it just truly doesn't fucking function on them, which sucks.
Wasn't this the game that only added GPU support like a week ago or something? Because it was bizarrely only running off. It was like running off of CPUs or something like that.
Yeah, a bug on the launch version just didn't. It was if you opened up like Windows Task Manager or Riva Tuner or anything, like your GPU would be running 0% of the load and your CPU would be pinged the entire time.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. So like it's just
that may
like
be the reason why I saw a lot of early screenshots that I saw were all very I thought the game had no shadows. It was so flat.
Yeah, it looked very weird for the first like 5 days because it just didn't run on GPU at all. But yeah, game is just it's like a technical disaster, but it's really excellent to play when it works. So it's
And it's the
it'll work
classic
itself
PC game RNG experience where everyone has a completely different level of performance and can't explain why. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
The game has run completely flawless for me every minute of playing it, to the point where I'm like, what the fuck is happening? This game is so chaotic and has so many things happening and so many enemies at once that, like,
It's wild.
the part of me that grew up playing Dynasty Warriors is like, games can't do this. This is illegal. It's supposed to have slowdown and fog, and it's not supposed to be able to actually do all this at once. And it's just doing it the whole time. And there's no frame drops, no jitter, no anything. It's just been perfect. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what specifically is perfect on my setup, but it is. And it's great.
Yeah.
I can get the game to run like smoothly, but it's not running as good as I want it to.
Yes,
Like I can get it to, yeah.
But like I just had no
whatever.
tinkering. Like I launched the game and
Yeah.
reflexively turned everything from ultra to high, and then started playing, and then never touched anything ever again. And
I
it's
wanna-
been
so-
perfect.
So one of the things about this too, I want to like, this is actually like an interesting topic that I have a soapbox that I want to get on a little bit about it. But people, I know that I just complained about like the performance of this game and like the annoyance of needing to deal with all of this, but people complain a lot about having to tinker with PC games, and I don't think it's a big deal. And I think people should get better at using resources. So I'm going to shout out a bunch of stuff. Whenever you download a game, type PCGW and then the title of the game, and go to the PC Gaming Wiki and download all the patches for the game. People are like, it's so confusing. How do I download patches? How do I know which ones to download? This is how you do it, and it's super fucking easy. And this is all you have to do to get good settings on basically any game ever that you want to play. So do that, people. Having to tinker with settings is not really that big of a deal. It takes 5 minutes at the start of a game if you want to get it running under most circumstances. This particular game is just very frustrating because it's glitched and it's broken. But that's just what it is.
I think you'd be shocked at just how difficult it is to do even the most bare minimum on a computer for most people.
Yeah,
It
it's
is
distressing.
It's funny for like
Everybody
for me.
was told that the viruses would get them if they did anything.
Imagine
No.
being
No.
worried about a virus in the Lord's year 2024.
Also,
Imagine being
I still
worried
get
about a virus
jumpy.
at
I
all.
get jumpy when I look at an emulator website. I'm like, is this real, or is this just, what's up with this? This looks sketchy as fuck.
If you have like if you have a single virus protection, you are fine. It is so like viruses
Everyone
aren't even that
has them. It's called Windows Defender, and it's actually
Yeah, Windows-
legitimately
'Cause
good.
everybody just moved on to phishing scams.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, the real money isn't in you poor little sad boy. It's killing a company. And
Yeah.
companies don't get attacked through viruses or Trojans or anything. They get killed by like man-in-the-middle attacks and phishing scams.
Yep.
Like you have to
Social
go after the
engineering.
people. Yeah. Social
Mhm.
engineering is like the new way to be at risk on a computer. That's why like all of your grandparents are currently right now, right as we talk, are currently being attacked by somebody on the phone trying to get them to send all their like retirement money to them. Like, because that's the profitable way.
Just
No one
going
wants
back,
to talk
just going back to the options thing. I am the kind of person that when I open a game, an old game, a new game, whatever, the first thing I do is go into the options menu and look at the options menu through the whole thing. Because that familiarizes me with what the game is, the options that I will have. Maybe obviously I can't figure out everything because there's a lot of options in the gameplay section that is about stuff that I haven't experienced yet. But, at least keybinds, get the basic stuff on. I'm that kind of person.
Yep.
But I will say that the only reason why I haven't played Alan Wake 2 is because I know I can't run in 1080p native maximum settings on my graphics card that I have right now.
Oh, you have an AMD, so you have FSR. You can't even use DLSS. Yeah, there's no point.
Yeah. No, I'll just wait. I'm fine. I'm fine with waiting. I'm fine with waiting.
FSR looks so bad that it's not worth using. It's not like DLSS where it's like incredible quality. You just want to. You just don't want to use it.
I'll just wait.
It's just a crazy thing
in
to
5
say,
years
though,
I'll play
like-
Alan Wake 2 when I have a computer that's powerful enough to run it at maximum settings,
Wow.
because it's a very beautiful game, and I respect that. It's not like I play.
genuinely mind-bogglingly good looking.
Yeah, it looks amazing. It's probably the best looking game right now.
Yeah.
I'll just wait. It's fine. I did the same for Far Cry. Oh no, sorry, for Crysis. I played it.
Mhm.
I think I bought Crysis on release. Actually, I think I had a GTX 760. It wasn't on release. No, I don't think so. But I remember playing it at 30 frames per second, like medium settings, and I was like, this game already looks so beautiful. I'm gonna wait, and then I did, and it's an amazing game. Crysis is.
Yeah.
But the only gamers get that reference. So,
Man. I'm so happy that you
I
said
do-
Alan Wake 2 because it reminded me of Alan Wake 2. That's a good game. Sometimes it's nice to hear when I like it when video games are good and not bad.
so I hear.
You solved the podcast. We can
Impossible.
stop the podcast now. The podcast is canceled.
People should play
it's
Alan Wake 2, Game of the Year last year. So fucking good.
Well, it was Game of the Year for some publications.
No, he's declaring
I
a game of
mean,
the year.
Yeah. No.
Oh, right,
Yeah, he's
right.
declaring it,
Me
yeah.
as the king of video games is declared.
Well,
it
you have-
the
you
Game of
have
the Year.
You have played the other one, so I suppose.
I
I
have
don't
played
even-
the other one. The other one is very good.
I don't even
Which is
remember what I
rare.
called game
No
of
one
the
ever
year.
played the other one.
No, what do you mean nobody played the other one?
He's
No
talking
one
about
played
Baldur's
Alan
Gate
Wake 1.
3.
Oh, right. Oh yeah, I like the original Alan Wake.
What did
It
I
was an
call game of
interesting
the
little
year? I
game.
don't remember.
Did what?
Yeah, Baldur's Gate 3 won.
Oh, Fear and
the-
Hunger Terminal.
Oh, Fear and Hunger Terminal. Wait, what was that? Your game of the year?
Yeah, I had to remember. I had to look at my own video to see what I called game of the year because I couldn't remember. I remembered
sort of
more
bounced off
specifically
a
that I
little.
put Arches in second place than what I put in first place. I couldn't remember like any of my top 5.
Mm.
Womp womp.
Womp womp.
Video games are neat. I didn't play Alan Wake 2. Maybe
can.
someday.
It's
probably do
it
it.
is you that you are hurting with that choice.
With my new schedule, I'll finally have it's actually really nice. I have flexibility.
Mhm.
I just pick up a game, especially since I've been playing short games lately. Because what happened is I conveniently had already finished every single game on my entire schedule besides the 2 I was playing with Toaster. And then I was like, okay, this schedule's not working. I should come up with a new schedule where we do 1 game per day. And eventually we'll get to a point where it's 1 game 3 or 4 times a week for 2 hours a day. Which means I can get through like 6 to 8 hours of a game per week eventually. But I needed to wrap up the schedule, so I had to figure out. I had to take down all of my future videos across the board, re-render them in combined videos, so that every 2-hour-long videos were combined into 1 2-hour video, and then other messier conversions for the Baldur's Gate and Password to become 2-hour plus videos. Then reschedule them in the new schedule, and then the idea was that like, okay, Talos Principle will end soon. When Talos Principle ends, since my goal is to reduce the number of games in the schedule overall, when Talos Principle ends, instead of replacing it with a new game, what I'll do is I'll take the next game that's closest to ending and have that fill the Talos Principle slot and its current slot, so it's airing twice as fast, so it ends even faster. Then when that's over, the next closest game will then be airing 3 days a week because it'll replace both of those previous games. And so eventually it'll be this nice thing where Lies of P will be airing 3 days a week, and we'll be just burning through an entire Souls-like in like a month, and that'll be cool. But I've already, since that's all backlogged already, I've been recording like the next games, and it's like my schedule for April is like all of Black Sad in 4 episodes, all of Portal Revolution in 3 episodes, all of Pseudo Regalia in 3 episodes, Underground Blossom 1 episode, the original Castlevania 2 episodes, Jusant 3 episodes, just churning through games, and each game ends in a week, and I pick a new game, and I'm just like stacking them like a big video game lasagna, just adding the next one at the end over and over again, and not having to have this big, like, complicated schedule where everything has its own designated day and you have to keep bouncing between things and so on. And that's going to be really nice for a lot of reasons, including the fact that, like, so many times over the years I've gotten like X distance into my binge of a game, like Tears of the Kingdom or a Yakuza game or Elden Ring, and then I'm like, man, I've played this game too much lately. I've neglected the rest of my schedule, where one game is backlogged for 3 months and everything else is due next week, and I now have to stop playing this game and play all those other games. And the act of getting all those other ones to even have an okay buffer to even look at the game I was binging again will take me like a month or two. That just takes me away from that game because I have to deal with everything else in the schedule. So like, it is really wild to just be like, oh, I can just play a game front to back, then play another game front to back, and just to be playing one game at a time, like some kind of streamer or something. It's like, man, this is a very different experience as Let's Playing. We'll see if it works, if any of it's actually better or not, but damn, it's different.
That's why I have wanted to change my schedule up like so much, and like why I've been working so hard on doing it, because like I really desperately want that that ability to just focus on one thing at a time. It's been interesting. You know, I originally switched to doing different games on every day because, and I had this talk with my chat. I was like, you all want to see me play more games. Do you realize what we're trading off by doing that? It's like you're asking for a different game every day so that you can slot in, but it means that every single game is going to be delayed by like a week if you want to watch the next episode. And they were like, yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. And I was like, okay, let's do that. So I did that. But now people like, now my audience knows what they like and like what they're excited about. And so we get into this moment where I'm like, all right, I'm playing Control for the third time. Hope you all enjoy it. And they love it. And then I'm like, all right, I'm not going to touch this game again for a week. And then the rest of my streams don't get any viewership. And I'm like, all right, well, that sucks.
I see this trap.
And
at least it puts you in a trap where you're like, I put all these things on my schedule to give you guys variety and try to maintain all the different like genres of things that you seem to like so far and so on. But in doing so, it's like the comparison like the idea of me playing 8 hours of a game in a week or airing that much in a week is astronomical compared to like the idea of like, oh, here's the 2 episodes a week or whatever. Like, it's like the difference there is like a game that's done in 2 weeks or a game that's done in 2 months. And like in practice, people don't stick around. And it's a bit of a shift because I like when I was growing the most originally, I kept starting new games recklessly as soon as I could whenever they were coming out, and would just figure out how to finish them later. And it led to these horrifically convoluted schedules where I would have these time slots where 2 different games would alternate every day, and that was half of my time slots because every game could only get like one 20-minute video every other day in order to make it possible to go through like all these JRPGs and Dark Souls 3 and all this other shit all at the same time. And it was just this big noisy mess, and I would eventually clean it up in the long term when there was a longer gap between releases. But also that was when sometimes a game would just kind of fall between the cracks and I would just lose it, and whoops, I didn't finish that game. And it wasn't even like an intentional cancellation. I just like was so overwhelmed trying to keep up with all these games. It's like once upon a time just chasing and just stacking stuff was so good for your channel, but now it seems like even uploading a second video a day is just bad for you, basically. And but trying to do that with variety doesn't seem to work. And in particular for the last like 6 months or so, like Talos Principle was very long for a puzzle game at like 34 hours or something like that. But beyond that, like obviously like Tears of the Kingdom was fucking massive. Baldur's Gate is huge. Password is exhaustingly long. And so between all those different playthroughs, I felt like it felt genuinely like I was like trapped, where there were so many long playthroughs airing only this often that like I couldn't ever, like, it's like, okay, well, you guys are wondering why I'm not playing that puzzle game or this or that thing that came out. Sorry, I can't pick another game for 4 more months. That's just, I'm stuck with these because I've got to finish my veggies. It's
you gotta finish your veggies. That's
He's like, I'm playing these games and I have to clear the plate before I can play new games. And you can only have two, it's one of those triangles where you can only have two. Like the idea of starting new hype games on time versus having a consistent schedule that doesn't eat your entire life and make you a subhuman like puddle on the floor. And the idea of finishing games, like those are in conflict with each other. Those three, you can't juggle all of those. And so back when 2014, my solution was just to do nothing besides this all day, all the time, and just make 8 videos a day. And I'm not doing that again.
For
or
me,
doing what you did with Mass Effect 3, where you just sort of exploded in content, like over the course of a week, just finishing the whole game because you wanted to wait for Andromeda.
Yeah, for me, I mean, my issue right now, I've talked about it before, but I have my YouTube account booked pretty much completely until January of 2025. And like that's pretty fun.
But I need to edit.
Yeah. And like I also have like unfinished playthroughs just like sitting on my LP drive. Like I have, let me look. I have 19 episodes of Armored Core 6. Never was able to finish that playthrough because other things came out and we had to slot them in. I have 27 episodes of Kingdom Hearts 1 Level 1. I have 11 episodes, I think. Hold on, let me find it. 11 episodes, 14 episodes of Lobotomy Corp that I'll probably never get back to. Like I'm literally sitting on playthroughs that I just like can't do. And there are other games I want to play. Like I would love to do Persona 3 Reload. I would love to do what's it called when it comes out? The game I was just talking about. I was talking about it last night. I don't remember the name of it. SMT5. That when the Vengeance comes out, I'd love to do that. Like, there's just like tons of games I would like to cover. That I just like, I won't be able to. Fucking Final Fantasy VII Rebirth just came out, and I would love to play that game. I would love to play that game, and I would love to play Final Fantasy VII Remake over again, and just for the stream, just to have it sit on my YouTube account. But I just can't. There's just no time. There's just no time to get around to it, and it's kind of a bummer, but it is what it is. I am so unable to make time for more stuff right now that I uninstalled all of my fighting games because I can't play them. I can't play Tekken. Wow. I don't got time for it. Like, I don't got time. It just sucks. It's a bummer.
Yeah, trying to do
that does sound like a bummer.
The internet content creation hustle while having a job is hell.
Yeah, I do not want to my job.
Back.
I fucking hate my job so much.
It's very rough. It hurts.
I'm hoping the review channel, the second channel, takes off once I get this thing out. I need to dedicate all of my time today to trying to finish writing that, because I finally made it to disc 3 of Panzer Dragoon Saga in the recap last night, which was good. But I have another 6 or so hours of the game to finish recapping before I can be done with that. It's just taking time writing.
It's like an essay rather than a review, or
no? I mean, it's a review, but I'm reviewing the whole series so the gimmick. Sorry, I have to think through what I'm about to say to make sure that
people will definitely call it an essay.
People will call it an essay, which is weird because it's not an essay. But the way that I'm doing it
an essay.
Is
don't call it an essay.
How dare
I? The way that I'm intending on doing it is like I'm gonna give a little bit of context behind how these games were made, but not enough to be like this is a history of, or like this is a video essay about. Then I'm gonna go over the story of the games lightly. I'm not literally summarizing every single event that happens. I don't want it to be a recap video either, but in the same way that, like a Dungeon Chill or a Grimbeard might go over the story of the game, go over the major events, talk about what they're about, then have a section where I talk about the things that I like about the thing, and then end on, some conclusion.
It's like that genre of game reviews where someone's nerdily gushing about the thing for a long time.
Yep. And that's what I want to do.
As opposed to having a take.
Yeah, and I'm not there to assign a numerical score or anything like that either.
Here's
I
my
really
post-feminist critique of Panzer Dragoon Orta.
Yeah. No, I'm not going to do that. That will not be touched. I have
like that.
Yeah, I have zero interest in doing a discourse. Like, I don't want that, and I don't want people to read my review, watch my review, and then be like, "Oh, like, this is the opinion that I should have. This is amazing." Like, I don't even care about that. I really just want to talk about these.
Wants to be a
cool
cozy
games.
gamer raccoon with retro aesthetics.
I don't even want to be cozy. I just want to talk
Too
about
late.
a thing.
You made that set, so it's a cozy channel now.
See, it's funny. You say it's cozy, but then like some of the other people I showed it to, like every single person I've shown my test
Did they
footage
think it was
to,
scary?
yeah, they're like, "Oh my god, it's like a creepypasta," and I'm like, "Okay,
What?
it's an ARG.
Weird.
It's so scary."
What?
I'm like, sweet.
Well,
I like that. There's a lot there.
All right.
I
showed
wasn't
my
exposed
friend
to basically any of that stuff to begin with, so I'm just like, oh, it's a computer monitor in a dark room full of like lived-in stuff. That's just cozy. That's just what we do every day.
I showed it to a friend, and they were like, "The fact that it's someone's room but you can't see them makes me deeply uncomfortable." And I was like, cool. That's what I'm going for. Like I like that everyone has like a slightly different take on the way that the scene looks, because it's really unique. People who are listening to this are gonna have no fucking clue what they're talking about, of what I'm talking
Everybody who is listening, look up Late with Toaster on YouTube and subscribe preemptively out of blind faith and be rewarded one day with surprise video.
I'm hoping to get the video out in like the next 2-ish weeks. I would like it to be out before LVFC.
Me too.
The problem with it is
I'm currently editing a video essay right now.
I am constantly working on this, and like it is just taking longer than I thought it would, which is like I feel like a lot of the time when artists are like, "Oh, like or like essayists are like, "Oh, like I'm working on it, it'll get done." I feel like a lot of viewers, especially me, read that and they're like, "Okay, like you're going out to dinner tonight. You're not going to be working on it tonight. I get it. I hear you. Take a night off, King." But for me, it's the opposite. I truly have just been working on it for so long, and it just is way longer than I thought it was. Like, it's just so much longer.
Just a disastrously long first video.
Yeah. And it's complicated because I told myself, like, I am not going to be doing, my goal is not to put out a 4-hour long video every month. Like, that's absolutely not going to happen. And so in a way, I'm going to put out this one 4-hour long video and then immediately do another style shift as my second video comes out, which is going to be weird, I'm sure. But there's just not much I can do about that, because I just can't.
A learning curve.
Yeah, you learn as you go on, and you have to commit to the things that you learn, and then shift for the next projects that you work on. And I mean, that's been the best part of this whole project, is like seeing what I've learned and how I've learned to do it. I learned so much in DaVinci Resolve in like a week that it's like truly mind-boggling how much better I am at it, which is really enjoyable. But yeah, there's a lot of logistics to get through before I can finish that video, and I'm making progress on it, and I'm very happy with it. And I will probably rewrite and re-edit some of the text that I've written as I record it as well. But thankfully, the recording process and the editing process is like relatively quick. The big difficulty with the video at the start was getting all of the context down, and like, because I use a lot of real life footage and a lot of like commercial footage, and like archival stuff to talk about the context of like, when we say the console war, a lot of people think of like the Genesis versus the Super Nintendo, but the console war was actually like a 3-generation long nightmare battle between at first Sega and Nintendo, but then Sony and Sega, with Nintendo kind of just existing on their own. And that's like a pieces people forget about, like the Dreamcast and the Saturn, and that in a way is very informative of Panda Dragoon. And so there's just a lot. There's like a lot there to talk about, and I had to use a lot of footage, and getting that in the timeline was tough. But now that I'm just talking about the fucking games, it's just like slapping unedited minutes of footage on the screen while I talk about my review, which is just great. So that'll be really quick to get down. I'm not too worried about the video editing now. It's truly just writing the summary, and then probably rewording it so that it doesn't sound like I'm just listing things off, because I don't want to do that. But it's tough. It's tough to balance, but hopefully once that's done, I can just immediately move on to the next thing, have my chat vote on whatever game they want me to play next. I think, there's going to be some degree of my streams where I am still just like playing things on a schedule. We're still going to get through the Remedy games. We're still going to get through the Castlevania games. Like I still need to do a good variety of stuff that I will not do, review videos about, if only to just fill the VOD channel with VODs. But there's going to be a lot more focus, I think.
At some point, there's going to be synergy between these things where you're like, this thing is going to be your vehicle for sort of like researching and experiencing and recording games that you'll then use to write scripts about and so on.
Yes, exactly.
A bit akin to like people like it's like almost like a much further version of like the process of where people like knowing that people come in to check out my opinions at the end of playthroughs led to the logical conclusion that like maybe I should like make a standalone off the cuff opinion video about every game I play that's separate from the main video. The playthrough, because people will just click on that and it might even do better than the playthrough itself.
5-minute quickie videos, yeah.
And you're taking a similar approach, but you're going all the way in on like, I do this playthrough live and then I turn around and I then like write a script about like the thing, and like like there's a cause and effect of like here's my playthrough on this channel, then here's my in-depth review of it on the other channel, and you go back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm going to do an in-depth review for every single game I played. That's just unfeasible. I played so many games last year.
Talking about it on the stream.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I guess my point is more like I don't want to set up the expectation that every single game I play on stream is going to get a review. Right. It's just I played 73, I think, total games
that happens
last year.
The moment you're known for doing videos about media is that the moment you acknowledge any piece of media ever, people are like, video?
When's the essay
when's the essay coming out? You have time to write an essay about every piece of media you experience, right?
But
don't fall for it. Just because they ask doesn't mean they'll watch it.
Yeah, no, they're crazy. They can't trick me into doing that. There's no
way.
Get you. But the that whole idea of like, I mean, people don't realize, but when you play a lot of games, you just naturally filter a lot of them out, which kind of sounds sad, but like I played 73 games last year, and even making a tier list, like I made like a jokey like game of the year tier list where I like just went over every single game that I played and ranked them against each other. But like some of those games were genuinely hard to place because I just don't have feelings about them. Yeah. Not even good or bad. They're just like, yep, this was a video game that I played. I remember every single thing that happened to it. I'm still intimately familiar with its mechanics. It's the equivalent of eating a stick of butter as a video game. Like I don't care. Doesn't
Those
feel
are the
good.
Games
it's not
that go on
nutritious.
the bottom half of the list.
No. That does not sound like what eating a stick of butter is.
Eating a stick of butter
for the rest of my life.
No, it would just go straight down my gullet, and then I forget about that it happened because it has no texture and no real flavor.
I would not forget because I'd be like upset about it, and I would be worrying that I was in trouble and something was going to happen to me because I swallowed a stick of butter.
My point is it's a flavorless nothing, and it's just like there's so many games like that I play and I just don't care about, and I don't want to even talk about, and those are not going to be. I'm not going to make videos about that shit. There's no point.
looking at my Game of the Year list, Hi-Fi Rush and Scorn are both ranked very low on my list because like they just are nothing. They're just not interesting games, and I played them and then I moved on and would have not remembered that I played them if I didn't look up that I played them.
I thought Scorn wasn't a good game, but it was an interesting game from a meta perspective. As in,
kind of it wears the skin of multiple things that are important to their genres. Like, yeah, it's masquerading. It's covered in H.R. Giger-ish art, and it's trying to be a Myst game, and so those elements, like those are some of the most influential things in the history of art. But Scorn doesn't anything. It's just
to put
it's whatever.
Point on this. Keith put Scorn on his like Game of the Year's list, the games I played last year list, and it gave me an existential crisis because I had to immediately look up if Scorn even came out last year, which it did not, because I couldn't remember when I played it, even though I did play it on
you have
release.
That reaction. Yeah, I was just like, there's just a few things I feel like I should rank because I don't usually make these rankings anyway. So I extended my Game of the Year or my ranking to be, like include like the last few months of the previous year to just add a few more things that still feel recent. But that still leads to everybody being like, what is this game? Where's this game? Like, that game didn't come out anywhere near this year. I just played it this year. That's a different type of category. I was talking about new games. Yeah. So inherently my list is missing all of the new games I didn't play, and it's also missing all the games I did play recently that weren't new. And so that leads to being a weird thing where it's only 23 games when obviously I've played way more than that lately. But it is what it is and whatnot. It's also like pretty good year overall for video games in 2023-ish that I happen to have played, because like
2023 was really good.
Like Tears of the Kingdom is 16th place on my list out of 23, and it's like it's one because I have a lot of issues with Tears of the Kingdom, but also two because like the 15 games above it are good. There's a lot of good video games, as it turns out. Yeah,
last year was great for games. I was very happy. I was very happy by the games we got.
And that's why
this year
Firmament can go in the toilet. Speaking of Myst.
Firmament?
There was two importantly Myst-like games last year, or ish, and they were both bad. Scorn was just deeply uninteresting, and Firmament's from the developers of Myst, and it was the worst game they've ever made.
Oh.
It was just...
I don't think I remember that.
It was just really bad. It's just a really bad one. You do very... It's beautiful, but it's like, it's a step down even from Abduction. Like, you just do a bunch of really tedious puzzles, and the narrative moves incredibly slowly and kind of just dumps it all on you at the end. And it has some of the worst levels I've played in a game of that style in a while. And there wasn't even just like one bad level. There was multiple bad levels of like there's one where there's an entire sequence where you're underwater and there's no swimming. You're just walking around underwater, and there's like a variety of pipes that are leaking or can be frozen or other effects are happening. And you're just looking up at this tangled knot of 100 pipes everywhere all around you, and they're blocking your line of sight, and they're all at different angles, and you just have to like walk around this big messy level looking up and looking around and trying to see where you can and can't find the angle to maybe interact with something new that will then open up something new over and over again for like an hour. It's like the worst parts of Portal. Like specifically those parts of Portal 2 where they would get a little too confident in their ability to direct you through these non-portal chambers that are like that are like industrial locations that you can use, that you can do portal puzzles in, and you end up spending 20 minutes just looking around trying to parse where you're even supposed to go and what you can portal surface and so on, and eventually when you solve the level, you're like, oh, I just didn't realize that was even there. Like those levels of Portal that happen sometimes, it was a whole level of that. It was awful. There's a number of puzzles like that throughout Firmament. Like, it's just like, it is not the level of craft you would think from the studio that like revolutionized this specific approach to puzzles. And it's also just so low context. Like, it is not what people like about Riven, where you have to go around and learn about these people and their culture and how they do things and their numbering systems and so on. And then having learned more, you'll walk around and find out and recognize something and be like, oh, that's what this means now. And now I can figure out what that machine does. And oh, this thing is how it's their traversal system. That's what this does. Instead, it's just like, here's a big extended puzzle gauntlet where the one puzzle mechanic is established at the beginning. Just go do it for a long time. And it's not very fun, and you don't learn anything in the process of doing it, and you just kind of like fiddle with it for a very long time until finally it works. And like, save me. Save me. This is not what what anyone follows Cyan games for. What happened here? It's like they never learned the mistakes of like the fucking the vehicle section of Myst 1. That one press the arrows maze.
Yeah, the
that no one likes.
Rail car maze.
It's like they're still doing that. Like instead of learning to not do that. But more specifically, I don't know the behind the scenes that well, but I just imagine that the Miller brothers are old and also not massively involved every second of the time anymore, and there's new talent, and so like every studio ever, I just don't really imagine that Cyan is Cyan anymore.
If only they could be like their older brother George Miller and make the best movie in his franchise at 73.
They're not related, right?
Okay. That's a Mad Max joke. That was a Mad Max joke for all my Mad Max heads out there.
Yeah, I know who George Miller is, and I'm like, that's not a thing, right?
But imagine if they were.
It happens. There's all these moments where like, wait, that actor is related to that actor? It's not a coincidence, and so on. Or just the weirdness of like when I was when I was in the middle of this is stupid, but just like watching the Super Eye Patch Wolf video about Roman Reigns and finding out that they're related to Jason Momoa, and you're like, oh, the world's real small sometimes. But no, Firmament's bad, and it's one of those things where it's like rough, where it's like we were talking before the podcast about how like at this point BioWare has not made a good game in at least 10 years, and by some definitions 15 years. There's a gray area there based on how you feel about the middle Mass Effect games and so on. But like some of these companies that you might have once upon a time seen as your favorite company, it's been so much time now that the people have all changed, but also the literal people may have literally changed, and that these companies walk on as shambling brand zombies, but all the people that make the games could be completely different people over time. And I have a similar reaction to like, it's stupid because I bring it up too much just as in reference to it, but like I've still never listened to the new Pixies albums because the Pixies they disbanded when I was 2. And then they came back. I saw their reunion tour, or their second reunion tour or something. I saw them perform live with the original band members in Vegas, and that was neat. But then a few years later, they are making a new album, and Kim Deal is out of the band, so one of the main band members is gone, and their lead guy, who's the most controlling creatively, literally went off and made blues albums for decades and came back to the Pixies now. And I'm like, I don't really want to hear what the new Pixies does necessarily. Like, they're not the same like the people who are the same people aren't the same people, but also some of the people are literally not the same people, and it's been decades, and I just feel like it doesn't make sense to call it the Pixies at that point. I don't really care what they make. And so similarly, like I can't be excited about a BioWare game, because what does that mean? What is a BioWare game? Who's making it? What is BioWare? Huh?
EA.
Yeah.
EA, yeah, absolutely.
Especially when EA named 4 different companies BioWare at one point, and then walked that back when they also valued BioWare so little that I hate EA so much. I know that's not
yes
hot take.
That's not a hot take, yeah.
I know, but I mean, like, I hate EA in this very specific way of how they disrespect franchises that they buy, in that they insisted on buying big BioWare for the big games they make, and you would think that they want to exploit the thing that they make and get all the money out of the thing they make. But then they named 6 companies BioWare that don't make that, like one of them was an RTS company, I think. And then they also made BioWare make Destiny instead of making the thing that they bought them to make. And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? What the fuck is this? And at the same time, you see them ruin Dead Space with a 3rd game by insisting on putting all these things in that everyone knew were a bad idea to put in the game. and then canceling Dead Space, dismantling the company that made Dead Space, then turning around and a decade later making an HD remake of Dead Space that's all about honoring its amazing legacy as such an important game that we value very much. I'm like, no, you fucking don't. You proved you don't care about this product. You don't care about the art of this thing. Like, regardless of whether or not the remake is good or bad, like, this company hates this property and only they change their opinions week to week, and it's incoherent, and I hate it. I hate it so much.
Keith is making it very clear how old he is, because the death of Dead Space is now older than I'm sure some of the listeners of this podcast.
Yes.
It is, but also I think the funniest thing in the world is that people keep trying to listen to game companies. Like, you cannot, they're not going to tell you anything. Everything that a game company, any game company, no matter how big, no matter how small, everything is a lying marketing piece of shit. Like, it doesn't matter what they say. They love it, they hate it, they're passionate, they're not passionate. This is they think it's a time-honored classic. No, they don't. It's passive income. Whether or not the passive income is successful or not depends on how much you buy into a hype cycle that they create, but it's passive nonetheless. Like, they don't give a shit. EA only cares that when they make a Dead Space game, it reaches a quota. If it doesn't, it might as well have been dead to them.
It's cruel math. Money. I think that's my take on it, is that, like, I don't think EA cares or doesn't care about Dead Space. I don't think they hate Dead Space. I think they looked at Dead Space on a ledger and it didn't make what they wanted it to be. And then they were like, all right, well, guess that means it goes in the trash.
Yeah.
I just find it inherently insulting to do what they did.
Well,
like,
for sure, you're in luck. They're going to stop doing that, and they're not going to make games anymore. They're just going to publish games, and then we all get to suffer under a publisher.
But that's worse. Publishers have always been the worst part of gaming.
It's it's very funny to me, because EA, I mean, especially right now in this context, like, EA has scooped up lots of studios and is currently in sort of an interesting forefront revival of, like, no, we believe in weird single player projects now. The Jedi series taught us that we can have single player games again. But then also in, like, the permanent hate quest against the fans of Titanfall, just fucking canceled Respawn's Mandalorian first person shooter because you just can't have Titanfall 3. You're just not going to have it. Which is funny. I think EA is a weird company. They're in a weird spot and they're doing strange things.
They also have not fixed the performance issues of the original Jedi Warrior thing, single player stuff, or the second. They're both performance nightmares.
Well, so it's like, the first one isn't a performance nightmare. The first one runs fine. The second one is a disaster. Yeah. No, not really. I mean, it's I believe it's in Unreal or Frostbite or something, one of their engines. So it has whatever issues that those engines always have. But no, the first Fallen Order runs all right. The Jedi Survivor is a technical disaster, but it is a very beautiful game if you can run it stably, which requires way more power than it should.
For me, the difference relationship, and it's like some of it's overly anthropomorphizing corporations and whatnot, but like when Sony puts out various HD collections of all of its properties, like here's Jack and Daxter and here's Sly Cooper and here's God of War or whatever the fuck, they're not usually like having a history of like shitting on the franchise in the interim before they then turn about and claim that it's amazing and want to sell you it again.
Well, actually, it's funny that you bring that up, because they actually, I mean, the leaks have shown that they actually really strongly support a lot of their projects that, like, don't bring them money. This is so depressing.
It's cool. It's like just like the art on some level and don't weirdly shit on the art. And EA's behavior about its own properties was so disrespectful to its own art that the idea of then trying to sell us on its legacy again for money comes off as so false,
like
as opposed
so
to
blatant.
Whereas like a company like Capcom, they turned their back on their previous formulas of Resident Evil multiple times to some extent, but it was like artistic iteration. Even if it was sometimes cynically chasing trends, it was iteration, not oh, those were stupid, and we're moving past that. Now it's for time for the real Resident Evil, and then having to awkwardly walk back and remake 1, 2, 3, and 4 again or something. It's like, no, we never shat on these things, so it doesn't come off as weird when we're like, we're gonna make Resident Evil 4 again. Everyone's just gets a little scared, they'll fuck it up, and that's it.
I think it's interesting with Sony, especially too, because like, and this is a really depressing piece of information that a lot of people missed, but from the Insomniac hack, a lot of like Sony first party proprietary data was stolen as part of that and leaked. And one of the things that was leaked was like the financial records of like how much Sony first to second party umbrella titles sold. And Sony has been marketing the PS5 and like doing PC ports for about 2 or 3 years now on Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart sold like 200,000 copies. That's it. Like it sold nothing. That was a AAA game with a massive like multi-million-dollar budget that Sony still puts at the forefront of its marketing to be like, hey, this game is cool. We love Ratchet and Clank. We've greenlit another Ratchet and Clank, the 9th game in this franchise that historically doesn't sell. Like it's cool that they're doing that.
I forgot that existed.
Yeah. I mean, and like say what you want about Ratchet and Clank and Rift Apart, and like maybe you think those games are dog shit or whatever, but like in terms of like a large corporation, it is very interesting that they are still that they didn't do the EA of being like, we're all forgetting about Ratchet and Clank now. The second that it doesn't perform, like they still hold it up as like a core franchise, which is neat. It's just an interesting phenomenon.
And they'll put them in their dumb Smash Bros clone and so on, and be like, "Here we go, it's the Ratchet boys." It's how you end up having a lineup of iconic things. That people associate
just building
you with
an actual
instead
legacy.
instead of dismantling everything constantly and being like, "We have BioWare." No, we don't. Just kidding. We don't have. We don't have
said that
BioWare.
right after they bought it.
We have Anthem.
I think the saddest part is that as fun and as great and as enjoyable as video games are, they are without question wholly unsustainable. You cannot keep this stupid pony show up. It's actually a fucking problem. The amount of time, money, like physical and hardware requirements just to make like even just Helldivers, a game made with the most embarrassingly bad engine, the most like embarrassingly bad outcomes, is like this still took so much money and time, more than we could ever process and ever think is reasonable to spend on a game that results in Helldivers. Like you can't do this. Like you can't keep this shit up. And that's why you look at Lethal Company and go, "Oh, what a little darling," in a sea of like, God, I can't imagine this person spent more than, like, I don't know, you look at I think of like how much money was spent on Baldur's Gate versus Lethal Company, and you think of like, that's insane. Could you imagine if Lethal Company had that kind of budget? What kind of game would it be? But would it be better? Yeah. Would it be better? Like, would it? That's the thing, is like at some point you have to say, okay, this economically isn't feasible, but it's also not feasible for the market. Like you can't keep making these giant fucking blockbuster games because they're not good, and they also aren't. The studios can't survive it. They can't survive unless the games become like literally beyond viral sensations. And it's like
I'm kind of a different mind on this, where I think that you need a very diverse pool. Like I do think that these big blockbuster tentpole games can exist sustainably. It's just every game can't try to be that. And the constant pursuit of that is like a major issue. But at the same time, if every game was Lethal Company and only had a Lethal Company budget and only was as ambitious as Lethal Company, I would never play video games again. Like
really?
I would fucking hate it.
Because we had the time though. Like back in the 80s and the 90s, that's what every game was.
No, though, because back in the 80s and 90s, people were really pushing the envelope, and there are games from the 80s and 90s that are 2D that are more ambitious than Lethal Company. Like, and I'm not
Well,
shitting
yeah,
on I'm not
that's
shitting
true.
on
That's
Lethal
true. You're
Company.
fair.
Lethal
That's
Company
fair.
can be a fun game, but
I know, I
if
know.
every game is a micro budget indie title that is just trying to be sort of like content that you play with your friends and never goes beyond its scope, like I wouldn't play video games. Like we wouldn't, like I mean this in a very sincere way. Like The Last of Us Part 2 is one of the most expensive video games ever made to make, and it was one of the most grueling, crunch-filled, human suffering-filled projects ever put forward in the industry. And losing that just to have more Lethal Company would be a genuine loss on part of humanity. Like I would be upset if we got rid of that, because they like sometimes you do want to shoot for the stars, and you do need to we need things that push things forward as well as cultivate what we have now. And so I think that the big issue that we have in the current industry isn't that games are too expensive or that development takes too long. It's that everyone is trying to be that because that's the only thing people are focusing on. And we need to cultivate a better understanding of like the different like tiers of development and like what is worth people's time to make smaller games more viable again. Because especially when we're talking about the concept of like creating legacy, a lot of these franchises and a lot of these games and a lot of these legacies that we talk about didn't just immediately come out as a top tier super quadruple A title, right? Like the first Ratchet and Clank game was not a quadruple A title. Like the first Sly Cooper was mostly a budget release. like all of these titles, these games that Sony has like built its entire platform off of, they worked their way up to this status. And that's how you create these brands and these ideas that people really resonate with and that matter to people historically. And it's really hard to do that when every single game needs to be, you know, the games as a service, long running, super important trend setting thing. And in even using Baldur's Gate 3 as an example, Baldur's Gate 3 was expensive, but compared to most games, its budget was actually really small, especially for its title, like for its content. Like Baldur's Gate, yeah, like Baldur's Gate 3 is a very expensive game, and its development lasted a long time, but like it's more close to what we would now refer to as a AA title than a AAA title, which is wild. And when we think back to all these games that are really trend setting and really important to the history of gaming, you know, thinking about stuff like Max Payne or, you know, literally the thing that invented bullet time in video games, like, you know, like shit like that. Like those are games that people still play, that people still care about on a micro budget. And it still pushed the genre forward and did a bunch of experimental shit that no other games ever did. And it was trying to be like a narrative focused, big budget game, but it still was doing that on a much smaller scale. Like those are AA games, and we're missing that middle tier now.
Yeah.
Everything is now this fight between it needs to be indie made by one guy in his basement or evil mega faceless mega corporation, where it's like, I don't know, I could play some more, like I'm fine with Devolver, like I'm fine with
messy weird
mid-tier publishers like
Rock of the Dead.
Yeah, sure. And like
I think
I just like that back in like the Nintendo 64 and PS1 era, most games were just weird.
Yeah,
They're just
there was
really
no standardization.
Weird,
people were
strange
experimenting.
games. And nowadays, it feels like there's 4 genres and everyone's competing for those 4 genres, and they're iterating on those ideas in incredibly minute ways, and you never get like Silent Bomber or Intelligent Cube or just baffling mainstream projects like that. I don't know if Intelligent Cube mainstream, but I mean, like it was like a disc-based game that, and it feels like a miracle how indie spirit a lot of the disc-based games of yesteryear were. Like they were published games that made it onto a console that didn't have a market for one guy making a game, generally speaking, and they had the weird mood of stuff like that.
To answer Andrew's question of like where did they go?
Where do they go?
So part of this is that we are reaping what we sowed like 20 years ago. And what I mean by that, what I mean by that is
consequences of my
people are currently, you know, people are very quick to be like, oh, like fuck Sony, like all these big Embracer Group is buying all these game developers. And I'm being very sincere when I say like company. all of these things that we're experiencing now, we won't actually see the ramifications of for like probably 10 to 15 years. And yes, games are getting canceled right now and studios are closing right now. But just as an example of this, we currently in 2024 don't really have that good of a B tier, or double A tier or whatever you want to call it, third party development industry, because in the 2000s, a lot of that experimental stuff happened because publishers were able to scoop up a bunch of developers and be like, all right, hey, we'll publish your games for you. You can experiment. We'll take that risk and we'll make something neat because we're all trying to figure out how that happened. Then when all of those publishers shuttered, all of those development studios shuttered, and the disconnect between publishers and indie developers grew so wide, and the field, the canyon between the studios that could make it on their own and the biggest publishers that survived that apocalypse became so big that it bottomed out in that middle, and there's no way for people to survive that, right? And so now it's very easy to look at an EA and be like, oh, EA was responsible and they ate up all my favorite companies and deleted all their games. And that's true. They did. But also, a lot of those games wouldn't have existed in that environment without EA to begin with because of the conditions of the market at the time. So you're stuck in this really weird rock and a hard place where right now we're doing really poorly in the industry in terms of having this, this diverse market, because there's none of those publishers taking on those risks, and there's no middle ground to work in that isn't just super disadvantageous for the developers. But also, all of the big publishers are dying now, and we're seeing a bunch of indie people that will maybe in 10 or 20 years get up to that point again where there can be a solid mid-tier development platform, I guess, for a lot of these developers. So it's a time scale issue on a big level. We're still recovering from the fucking Midways and Ataris of the world disappearing in the 2008 in the seventh, eighth generation of consoles. And it will be a while until we're able to get back up from that. But I think the point that I'm trying to make here with this, especially when it comes to big titles, is people are quick to polarize. People are very quick to try to find like a bad guy to point at and be like, AAA games are the reason why things are boring now, and AAA big faceless corporations, they're an easy bad guy to hate. I don't want a PlayStation 5. I'm okay with just playing Undertale forever. And it's like, all right, cool. But that isn't what, like, that these things wouldn't exist if not for the games that came before them that really pushed the industry and did cost a lot of money to make and did a lot of these interesting things, right? Like, it's not as simple as just looking at Indie Spirit and being like, oh yeah, Zeeker's made Lethal Company. I would love to play more games of that. Like, yeah, it would be cool. But if like Lethal Company is running now because a ton of games before it walked. And it's not as simple as just like one person in their garage making something, at least anymore. Back in the day, one person in their garage making something made Fallout and Fallout 2 and, Baldur's Gate, like 12-person teams made Doom. And that we literally just don't live in an industry where that can exist anymore because the bounds have been pushed so far, and it takes time and resources to push them further.
There's also a lot of problems with like amounts. There are a lot of games now, and they come out pretty frequently, even if they're 100% not above like a tolerable level of quality.
Yes.
It is astronomical how many, and it's not just like indie that are flooding it. They flood from everywhere.
Yep.
And so like you just have this problem of, like it is much like right now it is a really good market if you wanted to be a small publisher, because it would be much easier to convince investors to join into gaming, which is a huge fucking industry. and you can probably, gain some capital really quickly, publish like 3 or 4 games and turn into like Devolver Digital or whatever.
Yeah.
But the problem that remains is you need to create a game that's good, and also you need to create a game that's quality. And trying to balance those two things with the cost of doing it, with all the intricacies in being part of the game business, is just it's a fucking nightmare. And if you're seeing someone like EA going, I don't know, this isn't really fun anymore, there's a problem. There's clearly the algorithm that keeps this whole weird games industry moving is hitting some kind of like problem that needs to be untwined from the gears. And I think a lot of it is just lowering the spending on AAA games. I think AAA games need to be more like reasonably budget and reasonably scoped. Like I don't like it, and this is what we talked about, like the pool of types of games, right? You're saying like there's only 4 types of games. Yeah, because everyone's spending all their money on making the next big one in that genre, rather than saying that's cool, I'm glad someone made Assassin's Creed or whatever, but like what a bunch of fucking weirdos, I'm gonna do something else with my life. Like
I think that's interesting too, because like we're also running into like, this is actually like an economic thing that people don't talk about a lot, and this is true in like film and other entertainment industries as well. And it's a complicated topic because obviously there's like other fucky things going on with this, but there's a lot of focus put on like CEOs that make a ton of money and like underpaid laborers in the industries. And this is all very true. Those are problems. But as we all fight for like a higher standard of living and like everyone being fairly compensated as well, that also increases how expensive it is to make these things. And like when we talk about like, I want a world where everyone gets paid, a fair living wage, and everyone is valued, and everyone gets, price increases, their pay increases every year, and cost of living increases, and yada yada yada. Like a game like a Baldur's Gate, that was in development for like 5 years, suddenly gets exponentially more expensive. And that's not me saying that you can't make games that, ethically you can, just that like at a certain point, the money that is being exchanged is going to increase. And yes, we want to limit the amount of money that like CEOs and shareholders fucking vampire out of these projects. Because that is a huge drain on resources that should not be the way it is. All of that shit should be invested back into the studios and the people making these things, blah, blah, blah. Everyone knows that. Everyone believes that. But it is worth noting that like, I've worked on film projects, right? Like indie film projects, where 10 years ago, this project would cost $50,000. And that is less money than I make in a year. And I think that I'm underpaid for what I do. Nowadays, that same project with a team of 100 people, because indie projects need 100 people now, because you need a VFX guy and a lighting guy and a sound guy, and you want them all to be skilled at what they do because you want to make a good thing, and you want to employ your friends, and you want them all to make a living wage. That same indie project, I need fucking a couple billionaire investors to come in to make a short film for $500,000. And that's still less than what all of these people should be paid. In fact, one of those people should probably make $200,000 alone. And like, that is where all of these big budgets ultimately go to, is like, all right, how do we pay a team of 28 actors to voice all these characters and give good performances while also only working 8 hours a day, while also being, lodged and flown around and put in, places that aren't seedy, cockroach dens? How do we make sure that they get fed and do all these press events and actually market our game? And how do we pay the people that are doing the work to record them and make their voice sound good? And then, oh no, I've just spent $48 million only on voice actors. That's a fourth of our budget. Great. How am I going to pay the 300 extremely specialized programmers that are now working on this?
Good news,
and like,
they're underpaid anyway because they're in gaming.
Exactly.
And they're being submitted to certain churn.
I mean, the reality is you just need to make the place you live more sustainable, not
Yes.
make your like budgets more bigger. Like
Definitely.
Yeah, but like you're coming at it from a very reasonable perspective or side, but also like a big studio, or not a big studio, but a studio that has the systems in place where people know what they're doing, and people have experience working with each other. They can make a good game in half a year. As long as
Definitely.
as long as when you say good game, we're talking, the Lethal Company is a good game.
Sure,
but things like that, they can make that if they want to.
yeah.
But they don't
I
want
think
to.
Lethal Company is good in a way that isn't replicatable by any industry. You can't redo that. It's a very
I have
lightning in a bottle.
I don't
I have
know,
a weird
because
take on this, because I feel like Lethal Company is actually like kind of extraordinarily generic, and I've seen everything that it does a million times, and I think that a lot of the focus on it is just it has like some charm. It just won the charm lottery.
That's all you need, really.
I think that's all that was.
That's what I mean.
That's
It's
all you need.
Like
in
a million
small game.
but every company in the world can't make that game, even if they can make that game. Like that's the annoying thing about gaming, is that you can just copy each other's homework. It's fucking easy. It's right there. There's a source code for it.
The prime example of that is Vampire Survivors, right? Like that weird auto bullet hell game that people loved for 25 minutes. What people don't remember is that game was actually like a shovelware clone of another game. Like that game existed. The game that people now attribute to the entire like garlic-like genre of games.
Garlic-like, is that the term?
That's what they're called, is garlic-likes. Yeah, because there's a reason for it. I'm not going to get into it.
Because they're vampires.
No, it's not. It's because
he's not going to get into it. He's not going to get into it.
Regardless, all of these games exist because I believe the title was like it was called like Magic Gem or something like that, or there Magic Survivors or something. It was an iOS game. It was literally mobile game made to be games as a service microtransaction farm, basically, for mobile. And the person played it and went, I could do this with Castlevania flavor. And then he puked up a bunch of Castlevania flavor on it, and it became one of the most successful video games of all time. Like, the genre
is a
like
good flavor.
These things are it's a much more fickle industry than people realize. And the stuff that is universally liked, that isn't just fickle, like these huge critically acclaimed things like Baldur's Gate, or or these games that are basically universally beloved, right? That takes a lot of money and work to make. It is hard to make that.
There's always 1,000 headlines like, I developed Brigador and it ruined my life.
Yeah. And like it's just hard to do. And then betting on this like indie world of like viral hits is such a risky bet. Because in a way, it doesn't matter if those games are good. All that matters is that they are the thing that captured attention for whatever reason. And it could boil down simply as much as a big streamer liked it and thought it was goofy and made like a funny TikTok where he played fart sound effects over it. And then now it's the biggest game on the planet.
That is the threat, is that so much of the indie industry is determined by people like us, essentially.
Yep.
And speaking as people who are like us, there are games that are good for video content and games that are not good for video content, and that shouldn't be what determines what games are doing well. Like, it's cool that we can promote things and so on, but it sucks that would become the way that games are determined to be successful or failures, is based on how well they fit our content style, because that's not.
I mean, there are plenty of games that I've talked about wanting to stream that I just can't, because you can't stream those games. Like, they're not content that is watchable, that people will pay attention to, and it's rough. It's like it's very difficult. It's very difficult to figure out how to walk that line and actually show off things you want to show off, when the people just want to see the funny. I rolled a nat 1 on lightning and got randomly killed inside the ship in Lethal Company, a game I don't even like. Like, it's just very depressing to me that is the way that it is. But regardless of that,
I still think that discoverability in Steam and other, and the Steam Epic is even worse.
Yeah.
Is
definitely
a huge problem for
it's that entire concept of genres is broken. Whenever I look up any genre, it's like, here's a really popular game that isn't in it. Look at that. Like,
it's because so much of it is fucking farmed out to users. And this is where curation is like a problem. And this is actually where like old games, I think we're talking about, like, there's no middle floor. There's like, people used to just make weird ass games. And the reason is because publishers curated, and what you saw came as a result of people making strategic decisions about what they were going to put out and what they were going to market, and like trying to find attention. And nowadays no one does that. They just leave it up to us to find things and make videos about them, or they just do the algorithm. And because people never leave their comfort zone, all they want is fucking Steam to tell them what to play. And there's no curation anymore. And there's like, I can talk until I'm blue in the face about how Pathologic 2 is like
a billion
the coolest
indie
game
games
ever.
that lost in the market to Yick, because that game being famously bad was more profitable than being any of the other good games that came out that year. Like it clearly did well enough that it's funding them remaking the game / patching it or updating, expanding it in some sort of form of way where I don't know what's going on, but every trailer they show has a million visuals and animations and scenes that were not in the game that I played. And it's like, well, it's because that game got enough attention that they could do that.
Yeah.
And all the people making fun of it made it more powerful.
People, it's just sad.
I'm people.
I mean, people, what I think actually needs to happen is people need to have a fucking backbone and play interesting things that make them uncomfortable and take a chance, and not just be like, I'm tired at the end of the day. My life is hard. I just want to play Lethal Company again with all my friends. Fucking grow a backbone. Play Pathologic. It won't kill you.
No, Pathologic is more cozy than Lethal Company.
I mean, for me, the problem is like
video. Blah.
It's fine to make those games, but boy, if a game isn't appealing to me, I cannot and will not waste my life playing a game that is not fun. And that's not like I think the important part is that it's fine, because games aren't for you. Games are for everyone. So if you don't like it, guess what? Like I said, there's a fuck ton of games. You can go on Steam right now and just find a game.
Find something else. Yeah.
I was doing that. I found one for the first time in ages. I found one game on Steam that I'm gonna play.
Nice.
It's called
there's so many.
It hasn't come out yet.
Andrew's interest algorithm is also just like wild, and I still haven't solved it.
Yeah, and that's why like I don't believe in algorithms. I don't believe in any of that crap. You cannot programmatically figure out what I want. You could I could sit here and I could play what I've played hundreds and hundreds of hours of Baldur's Gate 3. I will never put that much effort into another RPG. You can't even trick me to do that.
There's a variety of very interesting games I've seen you getting really into, and there's also like universally loved crowd pleasers that you were like, yeah.
Yeah. I cannot tell you.
What if Larian now makes, I don't know, Fallout 5, and it's in the same style?
No.
Oh my god, I'm wishing for a future.
Absolutely.
It's too much. Fallout 5.
I won't. I won't even play Baldur's Gate DLC. Like that's how much I would not play this game again. Then? Because in the moment, in that time, in that very specific kernel of existence, I enjoyed playing Baldur's Gate 3, but it's not.
I see.
It's not replicatable. I cannot you can't just say, oh, but we added a whole new mission. I don't care anymore. It's gone. It's over. That small, minute, tiny. Yeah, there's like a tiny, small amount. Moment. Yeah, there's a little window of opportunity that every game gets, and 9 times out of 10, it always fails. Like it doesn't matter what it is, what type of genre, it just won't click with me. And then it'll be something ridiculous. Like, I'm excited to play a game where you just furnish empty rooms. Wow.
It's called The Sims 5, and it's also developed by Larian. Let's go!
No, it's called Furnish Master, and it's just like some silly little indie game. And
yeah, that stuff is cool.
It looks fun and comfy, and I like that. And then
I need to look it up actually.
yeah, and it's just but like that's well, I don't know, how would you even guess that kind of shit? How would you, as a curation software, go like, yeah, based on the games you played in the last month, you would definitely like this game. And then you look at the games last month, and it's like Baldur's Gate, Helldivers, what, like walkable mini golf, and like at some point a machine is like, what if we just start throwing shit at him? I think one of them might work.
Yeah.
I don't. And so it's just but that's beautiful about video games. I love that more than I did as a kid. I hated playing games as a kid because I had to go to Blockbuster and look at a wall of games that I said, yeah, all right, third-person action platformers are fun, but all of you suck at making them, and I'm tired of them, and I hope you all die, which they did. And now I'm like, well, what happened to all of the third-person action platformers? They're not here anymore. I'm really sad. Like,
They started to kill those.
Yeah, so but that's the ebb and flow of video games, is that sometimes you will feel like, oh, it's just shit I don't want, and then you could just take a second and go, oh, actually I could just go find any game I want forever. But there's always going to be that kernel, there's that, or not kernel, but always chunk of
Captain.
Yeah, it's sure. There's always going to be a chunk of time where you feel like there's only one type of game, and there might be one type of game being made on the public
on a mass
scale
level.
Yeah, but the people who are going to have the money to push a game ad in front of you, you're going to be like, wow, these all seem the same. But then you can turn around and go like, just type in a game, and you'll probably find something completely unique from it.
I mean, just using this as an example, if we're being reductive, like 4-person squad-based multiplayer randomized
common
streamer games are huge. I mean, and just to pull through a quick list of them that are all off the top of my head that share these similarities, fucking Lethal Company, Phasmophobia, Helldivers, all of these shitty Phasmophobia clones on my Steam store right now. Like all of these games, Fortnite, exactly. These squad-based games, there's a huge focus on rotating in and out the same group of friends. Isn't Destiny 4-person groups now too for raids?
Yes.
I think it is.
Destiny 2. Yeah. Destiny 2 is technically also falls in that category if you play with friends. It would be
they got rid of the larger raids. Experience.
I think there might still be them, but I think most groups are 4 people.
They have large raids, but it is more manageable to get into them than Destiny 1, and also very uncommon until you're like way late game when you're really it's
at the end of the game normally.
But
like my class even originally was like you beat all the existing content, and then you unlock the raid, and it was like 12 people, I think, or 8 people, as opposed to the 4-person dungeons.
With this is ultimately not that Lethal Company and Destiny are the same game, but rather when you zoom out and look at the actual like wireframe underneath a lot of games, you start to see where their design similarities are so close that they're targeting the same groups. And it's like, oh yeah, I do really like Helldivers too, but in a way, I am just kind of swapping out what game I'm playing with my Lethal Company people. And like I think
because there are inertia forces that are built into stuff that people have been grappling with ever since, like, how do we become the new WoW? How do we be the WoW killer? And it's like the answer is all of the WoW players. How do we? The WoW players don't value the same things necessarily. Like, it's not about is your game technically better or whatever. Like, it's the fact that the WoW players have a now like historic connection to WoW on their personality, and also their entire friend group plays WoW, and it's almost impossible to overcome that inertia and transplant everyone, especially since like even if you start bringing your friends to WoW, all of those friends have friends that are even if you get someone out of WoW to come with you, that person has all of their other WoW friends pulling them back into WoW, and if they come in, they still have there's a infinite fractal of networking of people with all these roots that pull them back into WoW because of all the connections they have in that game that are impossible to carry over to the next game. Like, it will never successfully do that completely, so it becomes very hard to actually fully leave one thing behind and move on in that way. And in our specific context, like our streaming group, and honestly, like, I don't think it's even a weird context. I think a lot of people just have like a Discord of their online friends they play video games with on a lot of times, even if they're not doing it for content like we do. And it's like there's adoption rate problems where you're like, okay, this game handles this many players, and this game costs, what we're looking at costs this much. How many people are going to buy that game or not buy that game? And if we all meet up on Saturday to play video games, what do we do if like 2 of the people that didn't buy the new game show up? Do we just pivot back to the old game? And then that's how you, that's why when we look at our history of multiplayer content, there's like a mountain of Overwatch and then suddenly a mountain of Lethal Company, and like it usually is like one very dominant game all the time, is because there's the one game that we've successfully gotten most of the group to play, and then we only play other things when an exception pops up. Like for a while there, we would only play sometimes we play Pummel Party or Jackbox because like Brian or someone would show up and they didn't have Lethal Company, and so we couldn't play Lethal Company. And like that kind of, once you have everyone planted in a game like that, it gets very hard to move from that thing. So like when we have this huge group of people that are all rotating in and out of Lethal Company, where it's like we often have a lobby of like 6 or 7 people, but overall we have like maybe even close to 20 people overall that are up for it in the abstract and will show up randomly every other week or something. That gets very hard then to be like, okay, well, Helldivers is out and seems neat, and Gigantic's coming out in a few weeks again. How do you get people to do that thing? And you have to like explicitly exclude people to make the new game even happen half the time. And it's like a lot of times there is this element of like virality and attention that happens, but also when a game kind of just takes over, like Among Us or Lethal Company, it has this like artificial social force to it that leads to its popularity, where it is the thing that all your friends are playing. And on a very basic level, it's not even like, oh, I'm a trend follower. It's like, no, I want to hang out with my friends, and this is how you do that. Like it's not like smoking or whatever, where it's like I'm being peer pressured into something via everyone liking this thing, and now I want to be liked too. It's like, no, this is an activity you only do by having this game, and wanting to hang out with your friends leads to you playing the game and everyone getting the game even more than would normally happen. And then the staying power in part comes from the fact that the overall friend group has to like quit the thing in order for anyone to move on to anything else, akin to like how I never personally decided to quit Overwatch, but my entire friend group quit Overwatch in like the same week basically, and now I've never played Overwatch in months.
Yep. I just
want to watch almost every day.
I just want to play video
games. You're in
games.
Portugal.
I want to play video games alone in my room.
You can just
alone in your room? How so?
That's what I want to do. I want to play video games alone in my room and just never talk about them ever. And I want to be the only person. I want all the games I buy to be successful so that I can keep consuming good art that makes life worth living. And then when I go online, I don't want to have to read people's bad takes about good games. I don't want to do it. I don't want to sit here and read about some pseudo philosophical assholes take that actually Baldur's Gate 3 is really bad for here are my large reasons behind why playing a game endorsed by Wizards of the Coast means that video games are bad. Like, I just don't want to do it. I don't want to hear it. I want the good games to exist separate from the dumb people who talk about them.
It is true though that Wizards of the Coast are shit.
Sure.
They are in fact a company. I don't know if you've heard of companies, but companies.
Besides that, but they are also shit.
Well, what companies are? Those are my mean.
Yeah, it's fair.
It doesn't
have you met
it's not necessarily
a
direct causality that literally every company is evil or whatever, but also like what ones are.
No, publicly traded companies are evil. Privately held companies are privately
evil.
All
the privately held companies are evil as well. It's just in a different way.
No, they're privately evil, which is nice because you can't see how evil it is, and therefore cannot add it.
I am but a young man who plays video games, and it is not my place nor my platform to decide whether or not the companies are evil. I do not give half a shit. I just want to play Baldur's Gate 3.
That said,
which
I do.
is great.
That's a double standard for me, though. What I'm saying here
Is it?
regarding Wizards of the Coast is my opinion. So what I wasn't just joking, but I am very unlikely to ever play a Ubisoft game or an Electronic Arts game. But yeah, it's absolutely double standard though, because I play Overwatch. And it's like
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So it's just
for me, it's just like how much can you swallow and what can you accept? And I have no power over any of these things. I haven't bought a Ubisoft game in like 10 years, so I don't feel bad about it. But also, I just also don't like Ubisoft games. I don't give a shit about them. There's one Ubisoft game that kind of intrigues me that might be coming out in the next 5 years. And I'm probably not going to buy it. Someone else will buy it and I'll borrow it from them or something. I don't know. Is
it
what
doesn't
it is.
count. Borrowing
It's just so hard
I can't
almost
to.
the same.
It's just functionally basically impossible to like not have any games that you play that have some kind of stain on them. And when people get on you for playing this or that game that is the bad, they're selectively blind to their own consumption.
Yeah, very
like
much.
they're just ignoring something that they're supporting that is also bad, and there's always something to unpack, and it's just exhausting at some point. Like at some point, just let people play video games.
That's likely the case for a lot of people, but I'm sure there's people who actually just play games by completely ethical indie developers and stuff like that. And
I think that
you can never
have
know.
Such a small
How do you know the indie developer's a good
that
person? You can't. It's
never.
always even if you're over researching everything and honestly trying way too hard. You'll still get surprised by finding out that the people you supported were bad. Whoops.
I think that's a very silly. I mean, no matter what, at the end of the day, you cannot make those kind of statements or cannot change your consumption based on something so intangible. Something is like they're evil. Okay, well, yeah, but it's an evil company living inside of an evil country, living inside of like an evil society. Like, how evil are you willing to tolerate? What's the level of evil where you go like, yeah, they could kill babies, but I don't know, man. They put DLC in their game. I won't tolerate that.
There
shit.
there was some game recently that I was just reading about this. I can't remember what game it was, but someone was like one of the developers, like the lead audio designer of this game believes that like they're extremely pro genocide and murder. So you playing that game means you believe in that too, and I can't believe you would openly support this. And I'm like, I can't believe me installing this video game that I've owned for 12 years means that I don't think genocide is bad. Is this really the level of hypervigilance we're at right now? Like,
yes, it is sincerely the level of hypervigilance people are at now.
Why
so
are
much
people this way?
Because they're uncoordinated. They're just a bunch of stupid fucking ants walking around yelling at each other. There's no hive mind. There's nothing that's telling them what to do. They're just reacting.
They've convinced themselves that yelling on Twitter is activism and will change the world because they're powerless to do anything else. So they've convinced themselves that's the one thing that they can believe in, but it also isn't anything. And that's just and they just keep going and and it's exhausting, and they throw accusations. There's always the fucking your silence is deafening because you're not talking about this issue right now, so you support it then. It's like there's literally once you're 30, you're like, fuck, I've seen literally another earth-shattering bad happen every 3 months for my entire life, and it turns out this is always happening, and I'm never in a position of power to do anything about it. And like
when in doubt, people generally just don't support genocide. For anyone who needs to hear that. Just letting you know.
It's like whenever you aren't advocating on the topic of the current thing, people act like you're endorsing it. But it's like, motherfucker, if I had to keep up with all the things that you guys apply this argument to, it's all I'd be doing all the time. And then I'm just not the thing that I'm supposed to be in the first place. I'm now
wouldn't be boring Keith anymore.
I'm now an uninformed political channel that doesn't know what I'm talking about and just keeps echoing the things that people yell at me to say so that they stop being mad at me for not saying it. And maybe they're wrong. I'm not saying that about the specific thing you're talking. Don't fucking project onto that. But I mean, like, you just want me to be a mouthpiece for the opinions of the people that are mad I'm not saying the thing forever, and that's all I do. It's stupid.
Yeah. And I think it's, again, you're interacting with a company who does other things. They're not just making games all the time. They are spending money on political favors. They're spending money on buying resources and locations and land. Like there's only so much that you have control over actively monetarily causing harm to. And I think what's important is focusing on the things that have a direct impact to the end result of the cause you want, rather than a general vague sense of moral good. Like, I didn't buy an Ubisoft game. I feel better because I know Ubisoft has like CEOs that assault people. And it's like, okay, but it doesn't matter if you didn't buy the game or not. That's not going to change their behavior. What changes the behavior is like ensuring that your country allows unions, and those unions can then fight for like proper respect in the workplace. But like not buying Assassin's Creed isn't going to get a union made. Like
exactly.
That's not how that works.
It just gets so complicated. And if anyone thinks they're not on shaky ground, it's because they're actually just not looking at the stuff that they're doing. Like
stop telling me my Jenga tower's falling. Like your Jenga tower's falling, piece of shit.
You weren't holding it because you're too busy going after my Jenga tower. Like I think about like being a furry online. We fucking speedrun discourse in the most just exhausting way.
Speedrun discourse.
You have no idea, man.
It's so much, so fast all the time. Like
what a statement.
Like especially early on with the war in Ukraine, there was an ongoing thing where you shouldn't support any Russian furry artists because you're supporting the genocide and doing so and everything. And it's
yeah.
And I'm like,
cosplay did that too.
And like, if you want to fucking cancel me too, like I have paid Russian and Ukrainian furry artists because they're just people. They're just individual people that want to make $40 drawing a wolf. Like, Jesus Christ.
Do they make the
But
same
like my
money?
response to half of that discourse was like, okay, is it ethical to support American artists then? Because we're fucking up the world every day, all the time. In similar ways. But we're just not current with the news because the world got numb to the fucked up things America's doing to the world all the time. Like, under this course of logic, you should never pay any American artist for anything because you're supporting the United States.
Anything ever,
buddy. If you've bought a single American-made product, you have supported atrocities globally. You have supported the worst war machine humanity has ever invented. So, like, good luck. I hope you enjoy being on your Windows computer, using your stupid fucking Apple or Google phone, buying a video game console from either Xbox or fucking like Sony and Nintendo also use American hardware. Good luck, you piece of shit. Like, pick your battle.
But these are just the dumb takes you get when you talk to like 19-year-olds online that think they figured out morality as a concept. Is that they form a sentence that technically is true, but then haven't thought it through in its context of how the entire world works around that sentence. And
I mean, they just don't even have the they don't even understand how the world works, period.
So you get these incredibly baffling takes where it's like it's somehow unethical to pay an individual artist for their work because of what country
the problem
they live
is that
in. When they're an individual.
It's very hard to see, or for me at least, it seems very hard to try and, I guess, untangle the web when you know that there is a lot of people saying one particular thing and you can verify that to be true. Like, you can verify that the war in Ukraine is one-sided. You can verify that, like, it's clearly not a good thing that it's happening. And that can easily just turn into, okay, so I can justify being, like, not supporting Russian artists or whatever because saying. I can prove that the thing that people are saying to be upset about is a thing that's happening, but I don't have to go too deep into the history of Ukraine or Russia or like the Cold War or communism. Like, I don't have to keep going down the historical pipeline to verify that my feelings are accurate because the thing in the moment right now is real. And that doesn't matter about what happened in the past, because that is the argument you would see a lot with like American made products. Like, yeah, sure. It's the same thing of like, oh, I think microtransactions are bad. And it's like, yeah, but you're saying that while you're playing Fortnite and maybe you didn't buy a DLC pack, but you're playing a game that boosts the numbers, and the number boosting is what increases shareholders. And those shareholders are motivated by DLC purchases because that's what gets the money value coming in on top of the new user account. Like, you're always contributing to a problem. The important part is how direct is your contribution, right? Now, I would say in the furry argument, don't buy a commission from Putin. If he's gonna draw you
Yeah.
a Wolfman, don't buy it from him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No
maybe
matter
don't
how
buy.
funny it would be.
Yeah, no matter how funny it would be of him drawing a persona of him,
No,
his
better
bear persona.
make him
don't
draw it.
do it.
Don't
Vodka,
pay.
no.
That's what you should do. Make him draw it and
But
don't
like
pay.
that's the thing.
We
It's
actually
like,
need to backlog Putin with such a heavy queue that he can't do anything else. He's so busy doing furry commission stuff.
make it so it's so unadvantageous to fight Ukraine because he could just make more money selling furry commissions. Like, oh, I don't need more countries. I just need more furries. Like,
I mean, my
20% of
point.
Russian GDP.
My point of bringing this whole thing up is just this idea of like at a certain point, discourse is just discourse for the sake of discourse, and like, you know, we can shoot the shit about what's wrong with video games or like how supporting like this is the evil, and if we root out this evil, the thing will change. But it goes all the way back to what I was saying at the start, where it's like the current state of the gaming industry is not the result of trends that happened this year, last year, 2 years ago. It's definitely influenced by them.
Because games take like a decade to make now.
Yeah, we are still reaping what we sowed 20 years ago. There are things happening in the gaming industry right now that are finally coming to fruition, but from before some of these listeners that are listening to this podcast were born. Like the time scale of this is so wide that nothing we do right now will make an immediate difference, even when it seems like we are, because the ramifications will just always continue. It never ends. So
yeah, like all of us buying Fallout 3 is the reason that Starfield is the way it is. Like if we had not done that, maybe we would have had a better outcome. But we kept telling them that this is good. Keep doing that. And then it culminated into like a brain dead RPG that no one wants and talks about anymore.
Yeah, very much so.
But that was like what, 7 games in the making?
Goes back,
like,
it's even before that. It's fucking Oblivion. Like it's
true. Like
it's almost
there's
16 years, and you know, and there's like a very direct link between those things. And like as Keith was saying before, like studios now are not the studios of the past, but in many ways the decisions of the past are still building forward to the decisions we have now.
The decisions are outliving the people.
Yes, exactly. So it's like hard to get down. But long story short, my point is play good games and focus on whether or not the games are good. That's my take. I know that's a hot take.
Yeah.
Play the fucking game. Play games and see what's good about them.
Also, as stupid as it sounds, focus more on enjoying the games you like and focus a lot less on hating the games you don't.
Yep.
It's
unless
like,
you have a
lot
YouTube
of
channel,
games, but,
then it's a little bit different.
Even if you have a YouTube channel, just focus on the game. Because here's the thing: is that there is such a thing. There is such a thing as that's the thing, though. Is like Zero Escape is only being given notoriety because now it's a notoriously bad game rather than like a darling beloved. But
Andrew will just confidently rewrite history.
This is not true,
it is.
though. This is so not true. Everybody who is looking forward to the new game by whatever his name is, they're fans.
They're just fans. They hate his games,
So
and they think it's funny how bad
you.
he is at writing, and they want to see the new train wreck.
We don't like Sonic and Zero Escape, but Sonic and Zero Escape do have
very hard.
They do have sincere fandoms. They do not have anti fandoms like Y2K.
But the point is that when you focus on, you know, talking about the things that you really like, you can find that more people will be introduced to a thing they may have not known about. And that is really the key in the gaming now. It's not about how good your game is. It's about how many people hear about how good your game is.
Yeah, very much.
And that is what needs to be more prolific, because right now all I ever hear about is how shitty games are, and I know that. I play video games. You don't need to tell me how shitty video games are.
I mean, this gets back to what we started the fucking podcast talking about, which is that fucking Helldivers is so fun. The game runs like dog water and does not work. Like, but I'm still here to play it because it's a pretty sick game.
It's a shame that you say that it doesn't run well on AMD graphics cards, because I kind of wanted to try it out.
I mean, you can give it a try.
You can just download it and try it and find out, and then
you have 2 hours
if it doesn't work.
Yeah.
My game just
highly
works. It just
recommend
works.
using DirectX 11 though if you're on AMD, especially because the game just does not work good at all if you don't do that.
Yeah, you gotta type that weird little
Fair
code
enough.
into your launch thing and then launch it to a black screen, then Alt F4 out of it, then launch it again.
Yeah. All right. That sounds honestly like my experience of growing up playing video games. That
Yep.
Yeah. Just find out if it works. No one can reliably predict whether or not Helldivers will work.
not even people with the
Yeah.
same exact setup as I do. Not even
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
who have played it on my computer, which are
Literally, the first
I
5 minutes
just
of
played
me
it and it ran and it was great and it's never had a problem. Except
The
for that
first
one
5
time,
minutes-
that one time when we got stuck on a loading screen where comically
that was very funny.
we were stuck in the loading screen of which is them hell diving, like the pods rocketing towards the planet with fireballs on them because they're entering the atmosphere, and we were stuck on it for so long that I learned that the middle pod, its fireball isn't like aligned correctly, so it'll slowly drift away from the pod over the course of a few minutes.
yeah,
And just-
it's that you're not meant to be on that screen.
It's extremely funny because it's supposed to be a 10-second loading screen and we were there for like 8 minutes before we gave up. And I'm like,
My
oh.
very first experience with Helldivers was me Googling RTX 4090, my CPU. I have a Ryzen 9 or something, 7900X or something. I don't remember the exact thing. 9900X. I don't remember. The
7950.
I don't remember what it was. Let's see this PC. But so I look up my system information. 7900X, Ryzen 9 7900X. I have my computer, my specs built out, paste it, get a Steam thread that is my exact issue, playing on a 4090 Ryzen 900 or 7900X, blah blah blah, 9 frames per second. Literally second thread, same specs, game runs flawlessly, having audio desync issues. Okay,
Yeah.
never mind. I guess the same exact specs just do not do the same thing for two different people.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah,
Wee-woo.
I mean it just happens. It's whatever.
What could it mean?
play the
How do
game.
computers work? Some people tell me
They
they know,
don't
but I don't
use-
believe them.
They don't use depreciated applications and they just keep moving with the times, even if it's a struggle and hurts them.
It
But
is.
sometimes you
And
don't.
that's why I'm
Just a
still on Windows
poor
10.
Boy.
Hanging on as long
mean,
as
for now,
possible.
For
Yeah, they're
now.
discontinuing support.
They'll
One of
find
these
you.
days, I'll switch to Linux full time when all of my programs work on it.
Windows
like
jump
OBS and
scared me with the
DaVinci.
fucking update.
No,
Didn't
it does
even
that a
want-
bunch of
it
times.
didn't even
yeah.
want it. It just suddenly did it and was like, surprise, you're in Windows 11.
Oh,
I'm
wait,
like, I'm like, fuck.
It uploaded. Oh, I
think
think
it
you
happened-
must have missed
yeah.
something.
I think it happened when I was trying to troubleshoot my breaking computer, and suddenly it was like, you're on Windows 11 now. I'm like, motherfucker, I'm already dealing with everything else.
Shit, that's terrible.
Yeah, once upon a time, you had to go to a store and buy the new Windows with a disk and install it on purpose. But nowadays, Windows just keeps trying to get you. Like, it just sneaks on. It doesn't even want to ask. You're like, this is fucked up, kind of. But yeah, I don't know. It's obviously a complicated conversation with like ethical video game, blah blah blah. But like, I kind of see ethics in media consumption as being akin to like veganism and whatnot. As like it makes more sense as a self-moderated choice you make for yourself, because here's how
Yeah.
you want to think about the things that you do and the impact on the world that you have. But like, policing it on other people just gets really weird because of the fact that like the world is so complicated that trying to morally judge day-to-day behaviors of people just existing gets really incoherent and hypocritical super quickly and just doesn't
Yeah.
serve much of a purpose. Whereas like I
People
would never,
should
I
touch
would
grass
never-
instead.
yeah, like I would never be like, you're an asshole for refusing to play a game because you don't like this or that thing in the background about it or whatever. Like, that's stupid. Let anyone can not play anything for any reason and be valid, but then
I do.
policing everyone for their own personal judge when they're like when there's so many blind sides just gets really messy really fast. It's also like different when like art says something horrible and you don't want the thing to do well because it's saying the horrible thing, versus the weird machinations of like, I don't know, the fucking second cousin of the environmental artist is a Zionist on Twitter and blah blah blah, and like you're like, I need to unpack what people are saying, and I can't even tell who's telling the truth, and what level of people who be bad at a company with 200 employees makes the product bad now, or I don't know. But also everything I buy goes into the taxes of the country they're in. What countries are ethical? Is there one? And it betrays a naivety when people try to act like this makes any sense.
I think
morally.
it makes sense to sometimes, under certain circumstances, to just be okay with, not be okay, but like sometimes you can tell somebody is taking the piss when they either say certain things or buy certain stuff just as a sort of a either virtual signaling or vice signaling, depending on your perspective or what it is. Either
Virtue is a vice, Colonel. You ever think about that?
what I'm trying to say is it's okay it's okay to read into people's purchase choices under certain circumstances, but as a general rule, it's just unless you're that they're just as Twitter brained as you are. then no, because normal people just don't think like it. And it is though, because Twitter just sort of, I don't use Twitter anymore.
It's cooked
famously.
everybody's brains. I have a section of the Black Mirror script that's about Twitter, and it's why I haven't finished it, is because Twitter has ruined my brain so much that I can't write about Twitter without having to like rephrase and crisis control every single phrasing I have about every way I describe every part of it, because it's Twitter. And like inherently I'm like, well, then these people I'm talking about are gonna like forcefully reinterpret this thing to mean something wildly different from what I actually said, and they just run with it.
No, it's okay. Here, I'll make the most inflammatory statement of the podcast. If you do that and you're that kind of hyper-vigilant person, you are subhuman and don't deserve rights. So you don't need to worry about Twitter people like that, because they're not people. And genocide against them specifically is okay.
Oh boy.
Are we good? Have we covered all the bases? Have I alienated
we've
everyone?
Endorsed genocide on the podcast in a completely
Officially.
sincere and real way. And
no, genocide can only happen to people, and they don't have rights.
Exactly.
Yeah, you
That's
actually
what I'm saying.
you've got a classification problem here in your declaration. You're gonna have to resolve that. You ever think about that?
I think.
No, but to explain why, we all are familiar more or less with it, but I think the biggest problem of why Twitter makes this sort of habit of, or gives people the habit of thinking in micro, in really the micro scale of speech and of actions and things, is because it is such a short message platform. If they had long Twitters from the start, it would never have devolved into what it is right now. Because it's basically like a
Twitters have only made things worse.
Do you know those forum conversations?
People made shit up on Tumblr.
What Colonel's saying is that the expansion of tweets has gotten worse because the site for so long created a culture where people were micro focusing on little things, and that was the only thing they could interact with. Whereas,
that's what I mean. You got me perfectly. Yeah.
Yeah. The thing that I think about, and like jokes aside, obviously we're joking. What I just said, people are
Fuck you, I'm serious.
hyper vigilant. People are so hyper vigilant because they've been taught hyper vigilance, where the only interactions that they have with people are negative and on such a micro scale that now they are applying a macro level of vigilance to micro level interactions. And that's just horrible. And like the way that I think about this always to like not be mad about things, and this is not a joke. Just the other day, I saw someone talking about Dune, and they had just the worst take of all time. And they were just like pulling shit out of their ass and being like, this is actually like how its storytelling works. And I was like, the thing that you're referencing isn't correct. You have no idea what you're talking about. Truly, literally using phrases wrong. You're so dumb. And I was like so upset about it. And then I was just thinking about it, and I was like, there's probably a guy in like Ogallala, Arkansas right now who thinks that Dungeons and Dragons promotes Satanism.
There probably is.
And like, he's not on Twitter.
Because there's still the guy at the end of Disco Elysium on an island viewing society from afar.
Exactly. Like no one is hearing the things that he's saying, and he's not posting it on Twitter, but he is saying it. And that wasn't affecting me. until I opted into remembering that was the thing that might be happening.
Yeah.
And now you want to quote tweet that guy.
And now, and it's like, if this was Twitter, I would be mad and I would quote retweet them and dunk on them or whatever.
I sometimes just block people for quote retweeting anyone.
Yes.
Yeah,
and
like,
so like
just the concept of quote retweeting somebody in any way other than for like a supportive signal boost is toxic behavior, and everyone who does it deserves to be blocked just for doing that. Like,
but that's
because it's
what I'm
inherently
saying, right?
a very aggressive, fucked up way of interacting with people socially.
Is like you can just see someone having a bad take, and instead of like making it a hyper vigilant like part of your personality that you look out for forever, you can just obliterate that person with an orbital cannon via pushing the block button on them, and like, then they just don't exist anymore. They're not a person. There you go.
Like some people haven't never stopped to think about this because like because Twitter broke their brain and got to them too young, but like. Even like yes, you can just avoid all the people you don't like and block them and move on with your life. But also like if you're going to engage, you can just reply to someone like a normal human being, like in a conversation, and respond to the idea directly. Quote retweets are so unhinged because you're like, hey, this guy said something on the internet. I'm not going to respond to them. I'm going to like what it's like I'm placing the person on a stage now. They're now on a stage at an assembly, and then I'm getting on the stage in front of them and turning my back to them and shouting to an audience of people about them while they're standing right behind me looking at me and wondering what the fuck's happening. It's an insane way of interacting with anyone socially. And what I've noticed is that when people quote retweet me to dunk on me and I block them and don't respond to them, if I later see them shown on if I go on my alt, which is just the Null Playing Games account, and the fucking algorithm shows me them, they're like, I can't believe they blocked me. I was just engaging in reasonable debate. Or I'm like, no, you weren't. You were fucking calling me out for a thing you made up. And I blocked you because I don't want to talk to you because you're somebody who toxically quote retweets people, and you're an 18-year-old. So you literally haven't like your brain's not
no
done.
life experience.
So because you look at their reaction, and they literally can't comprehend why they were blocked. And I'm like, what the fuck? What do you mean you can't? How is this confusing to you? How is this response confusing to you? Like, I almost respect people better. Like, haha, I won. They blocked me. Because at least those people understand what blocking is. Like, but people that are like, oh my god, why'd they block me? Like for me, now they feel bad or something. Like, what the fuck did you think the interaction was you were doing? Yeah. What do you think a quote retweet is? You fucking weirdos.
I see that and I'm just like, why? Like, what is the point? What is the purpose? I don't get it. And I do something very aggressive on Blue Sky, which is if I see even so much as the Twitter UI in a screenshot, I block the person posting it regardless of what it is, because I don't want to see it. And it's like and the reason for it is the way that people engage with media now is not, hey, look at this cool thing. It's, I saw something bad and you need to see it now too.
Yeah.
And like,
which just spreads the thing forever.
It is the Twitter equivalent. It is the internet equivalent of taking a shit and then taking a picture of it and sending it to the group chat.
Yeah.
Like, why would you do this? What is the point? Why are you doing this to me? So whenever people like quote retweet someone, even to dunk on them, they're like, look at this horrible thing this person said. They think that animals should be turned into glue because they like eating glue. Look at them. Don't you feel mad? And I just see it and I'm like, why did you show this? I was having a completely normal day and you put this in front of me. Why didn't you just do the normal thing? And like, you're walking on the sidewalk and you see a pile of dog shit and you just walk around it. You don't purposefully step on it and then take your shoe off and show it to the person you're walking with. Like, can you believe the gall of some people to not clean up after their dog? No, fuck you. You just
I'm gonna make this my personality now.
It's like, God, you're so dumb.
Anyway, we're out of time. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you next week. Bye.
Bye.
That's all I can do. There's a point where it's like Colonel's like, no, we got to stop. And I'm like, I don't know. This conversation can only be ended by being interrupted.